And the next and last part here is basically how to edit text on the cluster. So I already mentioned that before. There are text editors available on the clusters. My favorite one is non-graphical text editor there. So the most famous one are Emac and VI. Both are extremely difficult to learn. I would say all the shortcuts and stuff like that are not that intuitive compared to the Windows world at least, or even on the Mac world. Those are extremely, those are were done much before that actually, before even Windows exists. But those are extremely, extremely powerful. So there are something, if you learn them and you can master them, then you can edit fast, edit file in extremely, extremely fast way. You can edit by color, you can select in very way, edit, search very efficiently and stuff like that. That's extremely, extremely powerful on this. So the second method is that the gedit method I showed you before. I tried to show you, and I canceled it because it was too slow. That's basically creating a graphical editor. So with Mattelaer, that's very practical. You launch Mattelaer, and then you can pass graphics through the bandwidth. That means the bandwidth is limitations, obviously, and it's typically extremely slow and not responsive. So that's not something I personally like that much. You can use gedit, for example, that way. You can also put other stuff, but I'm not really liking the idea. So one solution, if you don't want to go graphical, Emacs or VI, one thing I can do is to use Visual Studio Code. And that's a solution I've learned recently, and I like it quite a lot. So Visual Studio Code is mainly a text editor that is normally working on your desktop or laptop directly. So actually, I already have it configured here. So installing Visual Studio Code is very simple. You can install it on Mac, on Linux, on Windows. Those are pre-compiled, so no issue on that. So you can, it's a normal graphical applications where you can open files, you can edit them. One of the main advantages is that we have a lot of plugins for it. And that means you can have a lot of plugins for Python, C, C++, any kind of text files you basically want. There is also plugin for Git. So you have, that's another session I'm going to give later. And you can see a lot of graphical stuff related to Git. For Fortran, basically any language that you want to use, there will be extensions for cool, syntax and lighting and stuff like that. Search and stuff like that. It's a wonderful tool that I'm using actually every day on that. So not using on these machines, so it's not that much configured on these machines. But it's a very wonderful text for editions. So of course, by default, everything here is local on your computer. So you can take a file, if you're doing new files, I will open the files on my computer. So I can do that actually. I want to say open files, that's what. And now I can go to my desktop and open the file hello world that I was taking from the clusters, which is very simple stuff. And you see here, it detects automatically that this is Python, and it recommends me actually to install all the Python plugin that I can do. First workspace, and now I'm installing this Python module that will give me, of course, the simple print stuff. It's not very useful, but that will give me, if I have multiple functions, I click on the other functions, I'm going where it's used or something like that. So that's a very wonderful way, basically, to edit code. I have a lot of stuff on the side as well with all the functions I need. It's really a wonderful way to edit code, actually. So I'm completely convinced, independently of the SSH part, that using Visual Studio Code on your machine is much better than using gedit or any text editor. This is really for development, actually. It's not like in that you're going to write your thesis, obviously, but for code, that's really wonderful. So Python is slow to install, but that's okay. We don't really need it anyway. So here, what we are going to do is to be able to do this kind of connections. But now, instead of having the files on your machines, having the files actually on a remote machines. So that's the extensions that they can do on Visual Studio Code, and that we have all the experience and all the graphical part actually on what they call the local OS, but the files are physically remote somewhere. So how to do that? We need to add SSH for Visual Studio Code, and that's actually very simple. It's like an extension for Python. But in this case here, actually it's well, in that case it's already installed. But if you click on extension, then which is this blob actually, which in my case was opened automatically because I was on Python, you can here search, and then therefore you can search for SSH. And it tells you all the plugin it knows about SSH. In this case, what they have installed actually is remote SSH. So you click on it, you click install, and you will have it as well as simple as I've done actually for Python. You click on install, and then it will be done. So in this case, it's already installed. I can install it, but I will not do it obviously. So I will give you 2 minutes for doing it basically, and to install it yourself. As you can see, there is a lot of other tools available. That's really a marketplace where you have a lot of extensions. And you can do great stuff. So after that, you have at the bottom left, you have this green arrow, and you can click on it. And then it will say connect to host. And that's, of course, what we'll do later. But the first thing what you need to do is to configure SSH. So we already configured it in mobile Xterm, so that's only configured for mobile Xterm. So we cannot reuse that configurations. So what we're going to do the first time is to click on this third line, which is open SSH configurations file. And then you propose you multiple paths. Typically take the first one is the correct one. At least on all machines I've ever done, it's the first one. And in this case, I have already configured it. So this is a configuration file, which is, you can see, quite long, so it's not easy to create yourself. But thanks to, I guess, Damien, or at least all the CC developers, so that's what he said. There is here there's here a link so that you can also find that link in the documentation, obviously. So if I'm clicking here, you go to a web page where it's asked a couple of information. So the first one is which university are you? So in my case, I will put UCL. What's my login? I will put Amat. This is actually only asked for UCL members, so you will not always have it. So here, we put CSL in this case. You have access to tier 1, in my case it's no. And then you will see below, this file is created on the fly according to the answer that you have put here. And this is actually the configurations file that you need to put within mobile Xterm. So you can copy paste all this, make Ctrl+C, go back to Visual Studio Code, and you can paste it here. The only thing you are likely to have to change, and that's what I have done actually, is to change 2 paths, which is this one and this one, where the paths are written by default for Unix, so you need to change them for Windows. And in this case, I put the path to where I put my private key, so that's the path for the private key, so you need to put the full path for that. And I guess you all know the path in the files on Windows. If not, I can give you online as well. If you don't know how to get this kind of path, I can show you in any case. So I go here, let's say, I'm taking one file, whatever. I mean, okay, it's here. I can click, right click, go to property. What is it? Property, yes, it's in French. And then I have the path here, and I just have to add the name of the file. Okay, so that's the configuration file. So now I can save it and close it. And now I can re-click again on this green area here, and now I can say connect to host. And now automatically all the clusters that are defined in that configurations file. So you can see that propose me to connect to gateway CC, which is meaningless in this case because actually you cannot connect on that. But it's proposing level 3, Hercules, NIC 4. So here let's take NIC 5, for example. So it asks me the type of platform, it's Linux. And now it's asking me for my passphrase. And it's asking, yes. So it's the first time I'm connecting to NIC 5. So it's the same message that I was presenting you before. It's telling me, oh, NIC 5 has that fingerprint. Do you want to accept it or not? Because it's the first time from this machine I'm connecting to that machine. If I was a bit paranoid, let's say, I would go to the CC website and check that it's the fingerprint. I will say, okay. And I need to enter my passphrase a second time because it's one for the gateway and one for the machine itself. And now I can do open file. And you can see actually all the files I have on that clusters. I told you that on NIC 5 I don't need that much, but I have again this hello world here. But those are really the files on the cluster itself. So maybe if I'm doing that now, a new one, connect to hosts, and doing all the Mattelaer tree because I have much more files there. And now if I do open files in this case, you will see that I have all the files that I have on my clusters on the Mattelaer tree. That in this case I have quite a lot. But those are really files on the cluster itself. So let's open a fun one. So you see here on the left, I have basically pictures, small pictures of all the files that I can quickly spot. In principle, I don't have it configured maybe here. On the left, I have outline, that's the one. It doesn't have found it yet. So in outline, you can typically add all the functions and class definitions that you have in the file, but it doesn't have found it yet. I'm never sure when those occur, but it will happen at some point. You scan the files, and you write here all the functions. And that's all very practical to move forward in the file. Okay, so that's a very practical way to edit the files directly from your machines, and you see that it's extremely responsive. So that's a very practical way from Windows or any machine cycle how to edit files on the clusters. Yeah, so this I've all done. The last stuff I want to show you. So I show you how to edit the files. But what you can also do is actually open a terminal from Visual Studio Code. Go there. I need to put it down a bit. So here you have in the menu bar your terminal, you can open the terminal. I can put it. And you see that I open the terminal now on NIC 5, and I can run any Linux command I want that you learned yesterday: cat, ls, pwd, cd, make, all the functions that you from Bash. But that's also a way. So in a way, it's possible to close to completely remove mobile extern and use only Visual Studio Code. The only thing that you are missing is if I'm trying to run extern, let's say here, it will crashing. I cannot open the display. So it's also possible to start on your Windows a graphical display if you want to fix that. But okay, in that case, if you need such kind of graphical display, it's probably better to go to mobile extern. If you don't need or not very often, this is a very practical solution. The only thing, and then for that you need to be administrator on your machine. But if you want to create the agent exactly like in mobile extern, you need to start the agent in this case, and then for that you need to be administrator, which I'm not on this machine, so I have not done it. But here I put you the information, so how you can, which command you need to run to basically set up the agent on Windows. You One last comment. So basically what I have done with Visual Studio Code was actually configure OpenSSH. So now if you open a PowerShell terminal, so, I mean the command, I can also now do SSH le maître tree. What's going on? And then it will ask my password, and everything is configured also to run like in Linux. I mean, if you want to do it, you can. It's not really useful, I guess, but it's also possible to connect basically like that. Yes. Just to conclude, and I mean, my only guess is that you not leave this room, and I will stay here connected a bit longer. You don't leave this room either virtually or physically if you are not able to connect to the clusters. That's the most important stuff for me, obviously. You can choose the method you want to connect to the cluster. That's not important, obviously. I like Visual Studio Code a lot, but it has its limitations. But the important point is that you are able to connect. So basically, one main message also of today is when you arrive on the cluster, you are on the front node, and that machine is where everyone arrives. So if you run something every day, you will block everyone to using the cluster. So you cannot run any, I mean, that's not where you are going to run your simulations. You can run text editor, obviously, a small Jupyter notebook or stuff like that. But if you are running something which is heavy, taking multiple cores for multiple hours, I mean, and that's an or, not an end, then you need to submit a jobs and run that on the node and not on the front end. So that's also something critical. Your Jupyter notebook, if you run that on the front, on the user interface, is that something like that's no issue if you are starting to make real computations. That's taking a lot of CPU time. That's not on that machine that you need to do, but you need to do a SSH. I mean, you need to use the srun minus PTI bash that I show you to basically run that on one of the nodes. So of course you will have a lot of CPU available, so you need to use them in a responsible way. As we discussed yesterday, there are two ways to waste it. First, you are wasting, if you are doing stupid stuff, let's say it, you are going to waste the electricity, which means that's not good for the planet. But of course, you are going to block other users to use those resources. And that's of course that you are blocking other people, and then at the end of the day, you might block yourself at the end. As I said, don't overload the front nodes, and you need to use Slurm for that. And security is of course extremely important. You cannot share your private, do not share your public key. That's fine. You cannot share your private key. So that's a typo here. The public key you can share it. That's not a big issue. Even if you like, but that you cannot enforce that you use actually we don't give you the public key, but to not have the same public key in multiple clusters. So it's important that for each organization you have your own private key, and you don't use the same private key for multiple clusters or multiple organizations. That's a law basically to have better handling later. But okay, so don't share your private key in any case. And if your laptop is stolen or whatever, of course, even if you have a backup of your private key, you need to ask us to renew your account, and so that we have a new one, obviously, that no one can use your credentials to arrive on the clusters. We have times some people will arrive on the cluster, can destroy a lot of stuff, and therefore that means that when NIC4 was, I mean, actually it's not available anymore, it's still running, simply because there was people who were succeeding to hack that, send a lot of spam to everyone and stuff like that. So that's also your responsibility. I'm not sure that's from one user that we had the issue with NIC4, but in any case, that's a bit of your responsibility. And then if this happens and someone's compromised another cluster, that means all clusters went down for a week. The cluster, especially impacted, can be down for much longer. So that's also your resource at the end, which is not available. So security is important for everyone, because at the end it's all tools with which you are working, and it's not working. That's always annoying. So that's just the 2-second security. Obviously, don't share it in that.